Well, where to start? Maybe at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So I think one of my earliest memories is being born in Nigeria to Middle Eastern parents. I always identified as being Nigerian. I did not know because those were the children around me and the people and the environment, and I ate the food. And I think, unlike maybe other expatriate kids, my mother was very embracing, and she always said, these are your brothers and your sisters. I used to go down to the what we call the like the boys' quarter, where the Nigerians that used to work on the compound lived and their kids and everything. So, and I remember playing in the rain and running around. They called me Oyubo, which I didn't know what it meant at the time, but now I know it means peeled skin because my skin is fairer. So it's kind of like my my skin is peeled, so they call it Oyubo, and that's what they used to use to reference the sort of like Europeans or expatriates or whatever. And then so I would always be down there. I was like one of the gang, speaking the language, eating food hot enough to kill a grown man. It was natural for me because they were all doing it, so I did it. We used to take off our clothes and run around naked in the compound. When it rained, we had big um, palm trees and the beautiful tropical weather, and you could see the steam just, you know, um, rising from the earth, and like our feet like in the mud and our hands, and it was such a natural way to live and so beautiful. And that all shattered for me one day. My mom at the time used to work as an attaché at the Saudi Arabian embassy, and she the um she was being dropped off by I think the ambassador was with her in the car. She was being dropped off at the compound, and he turns around and says, "Who's that expatriate kid playing with, the other kids?" And my mom just went, and then she comes up to me and she goes, "You can't," afterwards when she called me up to the house and I came up, I was having my bath, settling me in for bedtime, story time, whatever. She's like, "Hanan, you can't run around naked in the mud in the compound with the other kids." I'm like, "Why?" She said, "You need to have your clothes on." I was like, "But they don't have their clothes on." And she said, "But you need to have your clothes on." I'm like, "Why? If they're my brothers and my sisters and we're the same, why do I need to have my clothes on?"
Yeah.
And this was, and she said, "But you're not the same." I said, "But you said we are the same." She said, "But you're Lebanese." And she went like, "Oh, she's not." But that was my first experience of separation.
Yes.
And before that, my world was oneness. And I think after that, because as a child, I must have been maybe 4, 5, 6, like I was still very young. And I remember going through an identity crisis after that. Like I didn't know, and you and I always talk about this, Bassam, the who am I?
Yes.
There at that place, the person witnessing was comfortable. There were no questions. There was not even a separation between the witnessing and it and the being. And that's when I remember losing my identity. So, okay, if I'm not this, then what am I? And I think up until ages, you just keep asking until you just get to the stage where you quit asking, because you just know you don't need to ask that question anymore, but that was a long journey to get to that point. But that was my first, and then we would go
I
to
think
Lebanon, and
I
I
think
would,
that's just to share in with that.
yes,
I think that's is amazing that and yeah, to have a recollection of that first moment of separation. This is it's very important, and it's interesting you describe it as an identity crisis because yes, it expects something of us. It expects us to separate from the truth of our oneness, our shared oneness, and to become a egoic representative of an ego, if you will.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah. And then, so especially you're familiar. I mean, a lot of sort of I don't want to pigeonhole the Middle Eastern culture particularly, because some Mediterranean and Asian and are similar. Our
totally.
identity is crafted for us from the minute we start breathing. You know, you act a certain way, you do certain things, you don't do certain things, and then this is within the home, and then we have the other conditioning that comes in from the society. So you know, these layers
so
that
we have
then
the family
cover,
layer, and then we have the
and the
national...
little African kid in the mud is lost. I was lost.
Yes,
you know,
that's really, I think, we can all see that.
And I think deep at heart, I'm still always that kid, because I just want to go to the beach. I want to be in nature. I want to throw my clothes off. I don't want to care who I kiss or who I hug or why, or whether it's appropriate or inappropriate. The childhood I led there was so free when I was with my Nigerian identity, where I was born, that I relate to. And a lot of people say to me, you don't come across like you're Middle Eastern. And I know, because as Middle Easterners, we're much more reserved, we're very much less tactile, you know, or you know, it's like, oh no, you know, you shouldn't just go touching people everywhere. But
so
I grew up that it was normal to do that.
So you went, so then you went to Lebanon from there, and tell us what inspired after that.
We always lived this life in Africa between Lebanon and Nigeria, always traveling, because my father's work at the time was there. And then the next shattering experience for me, which I think I would have labeled as my first trauma. My father had an accident and lost his left hand from the wrist. And I was about 5, maybe 6, around about that time. My mother had a nervous breakdown, and this was a huge thing for the family. And I had to, so he worked for John Holt at the time, which is like Ford company. So they covered everything. They sent us to London for him to have a prosthetic and being treated and everything. My mom was
How old
out
were
of
you
it.
then?
I was 5 or 5,
Still very
6.
young.
Yeah,
quite
very
impressionable.
Young. Yes. And my mother was very out of it. She couldn't handle anything. So I was left in charge of my little brother and my father. And my mother, in a way, because she was drinking and on antidepressants and things like that. And so this was this epoch of my childhood. All I remember is just being there for others, wanting to fix that, to fix mommy, to fix my brother. I never felt alone, though. I was very strong. From a child, I've always had this really happy-go-lucky nature. So that, you know, I was sad, but I held all the tears at bay. When we went to the hospital in Africa before we left for London, they told mom that my dad had just had a little accident. So when she threw the bed covers off of dad and saw that he'd lost his hand completely, she made the beeline for the balcony, which I don't know why the doors were open, but they were, and she was trying to jump. All I remember is grabbing onto her knees and holding on tight for dear life, and my father going, Hanuni, hold on, don't let go, your daddy's hand now.
Wow.
You know, he said in Arabic, Inti zinde. Like the zinde is this one where the power is. You're my power guy, my power girl. And then all I remember is like we just like a wave of, we were on this wave of the staff that came and they carried us, and And then we fell, and my mom's weight was on top of me. And I don't think I've ever really been managed to dislodge that feeling for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I was
It's a
hearing
very
from
formative experience
yeah,
that it
yeah,
forms the way we look at the world.
exactly. So all I remember doing is looking out from under her, and my eyes meeting my dad's eyes, and they became one. I didn't know the separation between dad and myself. And he just went, "Good girl," he said. You are my hand, you are my right hand. I said, "Look after mommy, look after mommy," and I suppose, yeah, from there, from age 5, I became the caretaker of my family, in a sense. We went to Lebanon after that because dad wanted to, he couldn't work there. Now we had to, as a family, regroup. So of course we went back to the family, to the tribe, which we do, my teta, my aunties, my uncles, everybody, like we saw. And at that time the war still hadn't broken out in Lebanon. So that was as well very healing, being with the family there, because up until then we just traveled and gone and come, and I not spent any like huge amount of time with my grandparents or my aunties or anything. And it was good to have them there to help me support mom and look after my brother. And dad was really happy to be back there. So it was a really even though we were in huge trauma as a family, but the tribe being there helped. But I remember still this thing of being different. Even though I was there, I'd be running around barefoot, and my teta would be, "Come on, go put your shoes on. Who runs around barefoot?" I'm like, then the war broke out.
74, 75.
Yes, exactly. The war broke out.
This is the civil war in Lebanon, in case our listeners are not familiar with that. But yeah.
Yeah. So the civil war broke out, the bombing, so we're adding all these layers of trauma on top of each other, and
conditioning,
yes, 100%, 100%. And you slowly lose that soft little innocent you, my innocent.
And if I can add to this word conditioning too, in the context of a conversation, of this story that you're telling, is that these formative experiences which form the various layers of our conditioning, which then proceed to influence the way we perceive and the way we conceive, the way we experience not only the world around us, the way we interpret the world, in other words, but also the way we experience ourselves. So conditioning it's important within this context to understand that it's not just a word, that a convenient word. It actually describes a mechanism of what happens to the human. And also
Thank you. Exactly. This is why subconsciously I'm telling this, is to get to the stage where, this entity called Hanan, from the child that was running naked in the mud, to like when you met me, almost.
That's right. And it maybe simply we can put it this way: who I think I am is conditioned by these experiences, but what I am and who I am is actually has nothing to do with what I think I am. So who I am and what I have become have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think from every trauma I went to served to separate me more and
to sustain that separation, because the separation has happened. The gap is So okay, so let's continue if you don't mind. So now the war has started, and there are all these various different degrees or layers of conditioning, different layers of trauma and what have you, that sustain this schism from myself. So
Yes.
let's push forward with this to arrive. So what came next after this war and after Lebanon? How did you come to be in Australia also?
So after the
there?
war, we again went back to Africa, and
Right.
that was again very, very. We had to run away. We left. Basically, my family left. We had holdings there that we sold, and we went back and invested in the business over there that my father was running.
Yeah.
And then, so life sort of continued. Everybody's normal is different.
Yeah.
We were living for a while in a very remote area, and I could again go back to that natural life that I wanted. I was about 7, 8 at the time, but then 8, 7, 6, 6, 6, and then the sexual abuse started. And that's something that I've only just recently I've had like therapy and regression and stuff to remember and deal with. It's still so that was my concept of basically my worldview by now was that this is not a safe place. This is not a friendly place. This is a fearsome place. I cannot be loving because when I am loving, I'm taken advantage of. I cannot be natural and take my clothes off because it's like aib. We don't even have a word for English for aib. It's like
Shameful.
Shameful. So, this idea of that you are shameful, your body is shameful. And then to reinforce that, the sexual abuse that, and then I think for ages, then the eating disorder obviously developed because I didn't want to grow womanly. I didn't want to, I wanted to arrest my development to not be shameful and attract that attention.
To arrest that part of your development.
Yeah. So that was all going on at the time. And then still dealing with all of that, my parents took the decision that, Hanan's old enough now. And these are the words they used. And we want her to be able to flourish in the world. And of course, we saw the world as colonial, because we're colonized people from my experience in Lebanon, French colony, Nigeria, French colony, British colony. So, where were they going to send me? Off to boarding school, finishing school in England. And that was, again, huge separation, completely on another level of, like in our culture, we use the bread to eat the hummus with, and there it was like, oh no, that's heathen, you can't do that. You have to follow more rules, even, more rigid. So whatever naturalness, I often say like finishing school, and it finished me off. Literally. And my parents, they didn't know. They thought, they're doing this. But I think what I struggled with the most, Bassam, to be honest here, is the indoctrination of religion. From very, very young, I have always been rebellious, and I don't know why. And I think, again, it goes back to my African roots. Because we used to participate in a lot of the ceremonies there of, now you would call it like pagan, but it's not, they're celebrating earth, they're celebrating they're celebrating the healing arts, which like voodoo or black arts, whatever you want to call them, and they had the paint and it was just, and then, from experiencing all of that sort of like earthly spirituality that's not defined in any way or created, but spontaneous outpouring. And then you go to the church and you have to do the Holy Communion, the First Communion, and then, you have to, the worst thing was when you had to go and sit there and tell about your sins. You're 7 years old, 8 years old. All sins have been committed against me. I have not committed a sin against anyone. Like, what am I going to say? I lied to my mom. And that's where the guilt, they start, dripping the guilt in on top of everything else. And so like I remember the very first time I had to go in our village, and because we used to go summers back to Lebanon and do the confession thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh God, like, what am I gonna say? Oh, I liked mommy, or or I stole something from here, making up stuff like I didn't even know. I wasn't a good girl. Like, what am I gonna say? And then what really did it for me at the end was he asked me, whose daughter are you? And even at that young age, I was thinking, I'm the daughter of God. In here, I'm the daughter of God. I don't have a name or a surname. Because I was thinking, he's gonna go tell my mommy. All right.
And this is really important because all of us can relate, of course, within our own experience, because this is what you're really telling is the story of becoming a someone, an egoic identity, a personality subject to various rules and laws. And that could be fun. It could be from a sort of enlightened or an awakened positionality. That can be fun to play that game and to play it well, not only within the culture of one's own reality, but it could be in Nigeria, or it could be in England, it could be anywhere to play.
Exactly.
But what is really interesting for me from what you're saying is that this is this is the story of how we become a someone far removed from the reality of being a no one, just a spontaneous expression of the divine. So, okay, and let's fast forward now to, I would like to get this conversation to a point where of more recent adult years. So there is that
Yes.
background. And so, and consequently that of course brought you to a point in your life where it began
Yes.
to express as a physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, as a discontent, as an unhappiness.
Fragmented entity, I would call
Yes, a
myself.
fragmented entity, and the experience of this fragmentation is what we generically call as I am not happy in myself. So
Yes.
let's go forward to that
Yes.
point of realization where you feel you began to answer to a kind of inner calling, that where spirituality began to factor into the equation in your adult life.
Yes.
So
So
you were married, and you're living in Adelaide at that time,
yes.
and you're feeling the results of
So
all of this.
I would say the very, very, very first incidence of me feeling my inner being, because after that I was just on autopilot. This persona had been created, and I was just,
That's right. Yeah.
muscle memory. My consciousness was nil. Because I couldn't exist in that state with any consciousness or awareness. It was too painful.
No, you
So
have become a default expression of you, and you're just living out this default setting, and that
yeah,
brought you to a point where
I would
obvious
have to, yes,
discontent.
and I would have to say, sorry, my very first awakening was when I held my daughter in my arms.
Yes.
And I felt the sacred. That was back to that very first incidence of me running and playing, with my in my natural glory, and holding my child in my arms, and seeing the miracle of birth and the miracle of life. There is no expression, no experience till now that comes
Purity.
even close to that.
That's what we are.
I just thought I am a sacred vessel for life.
Beautiful.
This is what went through my mind. Like, what an honor is this? And this is how I still, every day, every second, every glance at this human being. And that same, as I heal, that same sacredness that I hold of Karina, I now hold everywhere in life, regardless. But that was amazing. That was a truly, I would say, that was when my, Khalil Gibran.
Yes.
He says the force needed to, when the pain breaks your shell, and the shell encases your understanding. And I think adding to that is the thicker the shell, the bigger the pain needed to
Yes.
break that shell,
Yes.
you know?
Mm.
And I think for me, there were a lot of experiences following, you know, because I was not living out from my, I was just living out my trauma, Bassam, you
Yes.
know?
We become a someone. How are we supposed to then live authentically? It's
Yes.
not possible. So it's textbook material that we would follow forward in to live these compromised lives, these
Yes. So
default
I
lives,
think
and
the
it
first
cannot be
time
fulfilling.
exactly. And I think the first, time that I started realizing this was when nothing worked anymore.
Ah,
Nothing works. I've shopped my heart out. I've cooked my heart out. I've done, and you know, except for the dancing, that was my sacred space. Always, always, always. Every time I was in that space. But when I opened it and it became a business, that also put me under pressure, because it took away my one safe connection with the not me. Because when I'm dancing, I'm not Hanan. I'm not on this earth. I'm not on this. I have no labels. I'm free, and I'm a conduit to something.
yes.
You know, and often audiences have commented that when they saw me dancing, people would cry or they feel like goosebumps. Or one lady even said to me, I saw a big light just coming out of, you know, and at the time I still wasn't. And I was like, okay, how many drinks have you had? You know, but then I understand now with my awakening that it was my sacral chakra, and, you know, like my aura, the energy, like me being this conduit to this beautiful otherworldly space. But one, you know, as I was saying, because it was also my business, it wasn't something I could always. And I mean, the only reason I lasted in it so long is because of that. When I was dancing, I would walk into class, all the worries, everything. The minute the music switched on, and I connected with my women and males as well, boys. When I connected with that energy, just like something would expunge, and I would be back in my world, my beautiful natural world, you know. But outside of that, everything else was not working anymore. I could not do this, you know, the daily, what do you call it?
Routine,
Grind. The daily
humdrum.
grind. I had to get off the hamster wheel. Is one is enough money enough? One is
So
enough clothes?
you felt it. You got to a point where you felt like, I have to get off this. It's no longer a choice. Okay, and then what happened from here?
So, I have always, I think I started delving into astrology when I was about 7, 8 years old. I read the
Interesting.
series of Jesus the Man around about 10, 12. So I always had this feeling of that there is more. There is something more. At the time, they called me a heretic because all my milieu is predominantly Christian and dogmatic at it, because, you know, that's just how it is. Um, and they were like, oh, you know, fire and brimstone, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't care. I was obsessed with these things, and I continued reading the Scrolls of Qumran, the Linda Goodman, and then I moved on to Louise L. Hay and the Journey of Souls, and so this is in this time when all of this trauma is happening. All of this, Shirley MacLaine, the very first books that she wrote. So anything like that, I would just like devour, like thirstily, hungrily, you know. I knew there was more, but I was seeking it, and it wasn't finding me, because I don't think I recognized it, even if it hit me in the face at the time. And you know, because that's around about the time you met me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was my very first real shift. Like, even though I was reading all of these things before, and I was going to kirtan, and I was doing a bhakti yoga, and I was, everywhere I found anything remotely what we would term spiritual. Although now these days I have a bit of reservations using that term, but that's okay. I won't go into it here. But it's just become such a catchphrase, But anything that would connect me with my inner being, that child at that time, and I have a very strong frame of reference for it, would excite me, but I just didn't know how to bring it into my life and keep it there. It was just little forays. And then I remember like searching online one night. I was just sitting there despondent as hell, going through all sorts of problems. And I came across your page, and I remember messaging you, and you messaged back, and then the conversation was opened, and that started. And I remember the mental pain I had in the beginning digesting the information on your page. And I used to tell you, can you please make it for lay people? Because for you, it was something you just lived for so long, and for me, I was desperate and thirsty for it, but I still had, and now I realize I was trying to understand it intellectually. That's why it muddled my mind,
I
and
remember that.
you always just tell me, your brain doesn't impress me. It's your biggest handicap. Your cleverness doesn't impress me. It's your biggest handicap. And I totally understand that now. And you do not know how many times I say this to others, now. And I think so slowly we started meditating. And I honestly have to say that for me, meeting you was the turning point, not just in what you said or what you did, but in how you lived. And I would look at you and I would think, this is someone who's not corporate, he could be doing anything he wants to do, highly intelligent, blah, blah, blah. And look at how he's living his life, your humility, your, just carrying your backpack and going everywhere. And, we used to see all of that like firsthand on the group, and also you'd share things from where you were. And so for me, that was my first experience of, and I think because also you are from a similar culture, we're from the same culture, and we came and all of that. So everything you said and did was very, very relatable to me, because I think I could relate to everything. It's not like, I couldn't say, he's French or European, they have a different life anyway and a different understanding of things. I was like, no, this is a person that's very, very similar to me and has been through a lot of the stuff I've been through. And if he's living like this, let me investigate them. It must be doable somehow. And I suppose, so from there, it got even worse, because after all the work we did together, nothing was working after that. So the spiral was even more. I little did I realize I hadn't yet hit my rock bottom. There was still more to go. Yeah. So you'd broken that shell and everything was gone. I had no skin. All my paradigms that I lived by were busted. And I went through a whole period of, what the am I gonna do now?
And I think I don't want to stop you there, but it's a very important point that you've got to, and I want to continue, but I also want to just highlight just that in my own work with the people that I work with, it's such an important place that we arrive at, and so many people currently in our global climate are in this place, and it's such a painful place, and they really have no or little resources available in order to understand, to put it in its place, to contextualize it within an inner experience of transformation. That's what's happening. It's nothing's wrong is happening, but this is what must happen. I have spent a lifetime building this scaffolding, and now this scaffolding is being removed. And what shall be found there? Well, what shall be found there? You know, and it can
And
be
more
very.
importantly, how am I going to exist without this mechanism?
That's right. And how am I going to exist? Because the same protocols are still in place, and they are demanding an audience going. And these are the voices of our primary carers. And now what? And how will you? That fear is a phantom fear, however, it needs to be understood. Much of the time, that fear is phantom. It's like your father may have lost his hand, but I have no doubt that I've heard the
Yes,
story. Yeah.
yes, all the time.
The phantom hand is still, and similarly, fear is like that. And and if we have the resources to understand that this is not real, this fear is not actually there, it's no longer there, then we can, then this period of being in a, what we might call this vacuum, is actually bearable. And we realize that within that vacuum, we can use our mind to guide the direction that we wish to go in positively. So you found yourself in this place after our connection, and you needed to go through that.
Yeah.
Tell
And
us what happened after that.
after that, I just went through, as you know, before nothing was working, but I was still keeping myself busy. Okay. Yeah. Thinking that, you know, I still able to sleep if we like to be, if, you know, at the sake of being, you know, slipping in and out of, you know, what people call the matrix, if you like, you know. So I was like still able to slip in and out and be okay for a certain amount of time, but then it would wear off again.
And the matrix is myself, this person that was built over time. It doesn't exist outside. I am so slipping in and out of this identity that was a construct, a hand-me-down.
Exactly. And then when I lost that, I realized that construct is not working for me anymore. I did not come to terms with it. I kept trying. So at that time, I have to say my spirituality was kind of like bypassing, you know? Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm doing my meditation today. Oh yeah, you know, and you would pick me up on it when I did it. You would know, you know, you'd be, this is nothing, it's rubbish, you know? And look, we spent a good 7 years working on this together, you know, and that was a long time, a long journey. But I think the real growth came is after, when I traveled to Melbourne, and I was there alone working, and I had a lot of time to think and meditate, and we touched base there. And that's when my real practice came in, because I mean, look, I don't know how we do it, but this thing needs time alone.
Yes,
solitude.
We need to learn to walk on our own feet.
Yeah.
Unsupported. The crutches have to be removed, and the support, the even those who may have been played an important part of our journey, there can be an identification there which also has to be severed. So this person has to walk, they have to fly on their own, unguided.
I think not only that, I think because the people you connect with on that level, they're always with you, you know, and you always touch base with them, and you always know, even, you know, telepathically. But I'm for me, it was more in my family. Yeah. So but being there on my own, because when my family is around me, I'm conditioned that I don't exist except through them. You know, what does this need? What does that need?
You fall back into the matrix, that identity. You become that person.
I didn't yet have the skill to hold my center and go, okay, you might need that at the moment, but I think you can manage without me.
Yes. Hold the center, and you can maintain that role. It's beautiful. The role is not the problem, just to be identified with the matrix, this myself.
It's just when it pulls you out and you are identifying instead of witnessing, I think that's when I go, look, and I go, okay, why am I, okay, pull back, and then go back, you know. So I think the main
And that can
shift,
happen again and again and again.
and again, every
Yes,
day,
many
every
times.
minute, every second, we are
Yes.
struggling with this.
Yes. And then I
Yeah,
keep returning to my center again and again and again. And so
yeah.
you are doing that,
So,
practicing
you
that.
know, consciousness, I think being conscious is being, it's so overused, but it's like when I look at a tree and I'm really conscious of it, I don't look at it, I feel it.
Yes.
I smell it, I sense it. The senses, our senses, we are desensitized to anything that's not food or drink or drugs or clothes or sex, or, you know, we are desensitized to ourselves and our earth and our breath, our food that we put in our mouth, you know, like we're desensitized. So for me now, it's all become about awareness. What am I? And for me, the mind, body, spirit, yes. But also sometimes we live so much in our minds. We need to empty this mind, empty it. Feel the body. The body is a very good vessel if we know how to feel it. But a lot of us are desensitized,
Yes.
you know.
Our
I
intellect
noticed
has been
even,
celebrated for so
yes,
long. We think that that's what we are.
yes. So continuing from there, so I was starting to become, and you know what, in direct proportion to my consciousness and awareness, the pain increased, didn't decrease. The more conscious I became, but I still didn't know how to manage it properly. Everything irked me. Everything would, because I was suddenly like I had this hazmat suit that I was walking in, and it's taken away, and suddenly everything's noisy and everything's smelly and everything's scary and and I just wanted to be left alone. It's just leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. So when we go through these periods, instead of just going to a doctor and grabbing a depression pill, this is where the difference came from me. And in the early years, when I would get to the rock bottom like this, go see my doctor, antidepressants, habibi, here you go, there you go, now boom, okay, good, I can go back and play the game now.
The way
And then
of distraction,
yeah,
medicating our pain instead of feeling to heal, feel to heal.
Feel to heal, exactly. So I then just sat in everything. I sat in everything, and I think I went through a period. It was exactly like the dark night of the soul. I couldn't get out of bed, and I didn't force myself. And I remember talking to you at the time, you know, because even though we've been away for, you know, I would still call and we'd still talk, and you said to me, just let it be. If that's what you feel, just let it be. If you don't have to get out of bed, don't get out of bed. It's fine. You're not depressed. You're just allowing whatever is to come through.
Yeah.
And I did. I did. And it's not easy. So
And
if I
please,
have to,
if I may here,
yeah,
this is an important one for anyone listening to this who are experiencing these sorts of living experiences, is yes, you've got to allow that to come out.
that's the word, allow.
Without reacting to any means of distracting, you just allow, and
Yeah.
it won't last. One of the primary finding of the Buddha, we might say, is anicca, a word that means changing, everything changing. Uh, it's temporary. It will come up, it will go, everything will pass, you know.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So you had that dark night of the soul, as you described it. You allowed yourself to release to it, and you went
Yes.
through the withdrawals.
Yes. I
Yeah.
went through the withdrawals. I quit trying to resurrect my career at that stage. It wasn't my focus anymore, even though, you know, I went back to uni and I studied and I got my degree in internet comms, and I was working for, you know, a huge company interstate and all of that. So all of that was still hunky-dory, mate. But inside, no. It was still the same. Not only was it not working anymore, it was actually detrimental now. It got to the stage where I could not even play the game anymore.
Yes.
I just couldn't play that game anymore.
The lie becomes apparent to ourselves, and we cannot live with the lie.
Yeah.
And that's a very important point. And
yeah.
Okay.
So at that stage, for me, how I chose to deal with it was to journey. Yeah. And sometimes we don't have to journey like physically. We can journey inwardly. But I've been doing this inward journeying for, since like I met you up until the point when I came back to Adelaide, and then I said, no, I'm going to Lebanon. I said, I'm going to Lebanon. There is still things there that I need to heal and do and come to terms with. I had to journey back to the source in a way. And I did. I went back. And I stayed there for 18 months. And I saw what it is to be hell on earth. I saw what it is to be so fragmented, so disconnected from our humanity and our souls. And then the COVID hit. And so this was, as much as I thought everything else was rock bottom, this was rock bottom of another type. However, I was not flinching. I was not reacting to it. I was just taking it all on board.
You were now equipped inwardly with the support mechanisms of awareness in order to experience hell on earth without reacting, staying centered.
Really, I looked at what was happening in that country, my country, may I add, people that I am related to and not related to. This is like what we identify with, and I was just looking at what was happening around me. And I was like, this is all wrong. This is all so wrong. However, I was living in our village with miles and miles and miles and miles of land and trees and natural. Whenever I'm out in nature, Bassam, I am always centered and connected. I think there's something about our natural world that is so devalued at the moment. And I think this is why we have this is a big thing, us sitting in these little boxes all day, not smelling fresh air, not seeing greenery, not experiencing water from a stream. How many kids today have actually drank water from a fountain that's right. Coming out of a rock in the earth?
That's right. And that may be again. It may be again. And if we can bring that centeredness into the city, then we can transform the city back into the Garden of Eden, so to speak. But
yes.
Our work is in the city. In fact, our inner work finds us exactly in the details of our life.
Yes, 100%. And look at this current global landscape that we have all gone through, as difficult and traumatic as it is for everyone. I honestly think it's the best thing that's happened. I see people around me so changed because they've actually had to sit at home in their and deal with it
without being, any of the distractions, without any of these things that were primary. Now they've become non-existent.
Doesn't it say something, Bassam, when they say the divorce rate is like, I'm not very good with numbers, but they say like the divorce rates in so many countries has gone through the roof. What does that say about us, that we're living our life with the people that the minute we're locked down with them,
conditioned lives,
we want to divorce them?
Yeah, we're living authentically uh, uh, we're living conditioned lives. They cannot be sustained.
It's not sustainable.
Sustainability,
It wasn't for me. It wasn't
only
for me.
authentic
And you know
life.
how conditioned I am. I was.
Yeah, in our own way, we all have to find our way back to authenticity. Okay, so, and where are you at today in terms of this? We have a few more minutes, about 10
Yeah.
minutes or
Well,
so. So where are you at today? You after Lebanon, then of course the
so
terrible
I
bomb
came
happened
back.
and you came back to Australia.
I came back to Australia. I think the one thing that Lebanon, and this is huge, people, we cannot do anything on an inward level unless it starts with I am grateful, I am thankful.
Yeah.
And I came back from Lebanon. I think even up until then, I still had this sense of what you say it like, I'm stuck for the word, but basically that, I'm entitled to entitlement. I had a sense of entitlement. I came back from there. I did not even take a piece of bread that I was putting in my mouth for granted. And
yeah.
this is why the practice we used to do in that group is so powerful. I always go back to it. And I think this is something that needs to be really put out there much more, in the Evolve group. That was a turning point for all of us in that group, I'm sure. Yeah. And I will speak for all of us confidently.
Being revived in a different, sort of way, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just gratitude. In the Middle Eastern culture, and it used to irk me to no end when I didn't understand it. I would see people there with so little, and I'd say, "Hi, how are you going?" And they go, "Katar khair Allah, thank God, katar khair Allah." And I'm like, "Katar khair Allah for what? For whatever we have, whatever is here is bounty, whatever it is." I might be thinking, I want, Porsches and houses and, whatever bread. I'm not like that, but I'm just saying, and he might have a little piece of bread with a piece of olive on it, or even if he doesn't have olive, a bit of olive oil, and a piece of mint from not even his garden, from a little pot on his little balcony, and he sees it,
Gratitude.
Or she like it's
the gift from heaven. And the gift of gratitude is that it aligns us with the moment. We must see the moment in order to be in the moment. So gratitude
that was a big one for me. Gratitude is a huge thing that I rely on every day. The minute I open my eyes, I'm like, thank you. Gratitude, and actually feel it in your body. Don't just say it. Like, I feel it here.
Wonderful.
I feel this gooiness inside when I'm
powerful.
Yes,
it's a powerful practice.
Yes. And I think the second thing is minimizing noise in my life. Our lives are very noisy, so I always being there in the village on my own and being locked down with mommy in this 300-year-old ancestral home of ours. It was just mom and I and the cats, and I could hear nature. I could hear the breeze. I could hear so much that's not noise. I could hear myself, my soul. I could hear my soul. So the gratitude was a big thing for me coming back, and just seeing the life through different eyes, just being in every moment. I don't make plans anymore. Like, people ask me, do you want to go somewhere? I was like, I don't know. I might not be in the mood that morning. I might not be here. I might be dead. I don't know. Ask me on the day. I don't have long-term plans anymore. And I've got no control over the future. You know how many plans I've made and the universe has gone, Sosmay, it's not for you.
There's a joke which says, how do you make God laugh? Apparently, you tell him or her your plans. God finds this hysterical.
I love it.
maybe even.
Yeah,
So
I love it.
to,
It's a very long journey. And I think my main thing would be, had I ignored, is to be in touch with your mind, with your body, with your soul, with your breath. When you are unhappy, when you are irritable, when you are diseased,
yeah.
when you are uneasy, when you are miserable, don't just medicate with these things. If someone were to ask me, this
Yeah.
is what I would say, because I
So
tried
I
it.
would actually like to, as a way of bringing our conversation to close, what would you say to people who are experiencing this inner shift? They may not be aware that that's what's happening, moving from a purely materialistic way of experiencing the world to a more spiritual way of being without knowing. And the word spiritual is not necessary, but what experiencing an internal shift
Conscious, yeah,
without
conscious
knowing,
one.
what would you say to them as a way of moving us towards a close in our
I,
conversation
I,
today?
I would say a big thing for me, Bassam, was acceptance. Acceptance. And we have that, but we say taslim, salim, Islam is handing over.
Yes.
Hand over,
Surrender. Yeah.
surrender. When you stop struggling, and I know it's a bit cliche, but it's let go and let flow. When you let go and you stop struggling and you stop trying to implement control the outcomes, you know, and you just let things be. And I know for us that is very, very scary. It's very scary, but I don't know, because look, let me tell you this: if you don't do it willingly, it's gonna happen anyway.
It's going to
It is
happen
gonna
anyway.
happen.
And I think it's we are raised on this principle, uninvestigated principle that says we are living life, when the fact, the meditators finding is that it's the opposite. Life is living precariously through this vehicle.
Through us,
So
yeah,
to let go for us is so against the very makeup of our personality. We feel that
yeah.
if we don't do life, it's going to collapse. But you're saying
And
is
like,
that by
yes, have it with
allowing and accepting,
allowing,
and you're saying,
accepting, being grateful for where you are, and consciousness. Be conscious. Like, even if you put your attention on the task you are doing,
and
put your
so,
attention on the task you are doing.
and that is not going to be a threat to my life. It's going to, in fact, guide it towards flow and
Also,
ease.
something really important, I think, that all of us are scared of, and I've been with the six figures in my accounts and my checkbooks and everything, and I've been with the zero figures, you know, and I've survived and I'm happy.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
I've
the,
never, you know, sometimes like everybody in life goes through. Money doesn't create happiness. Money and materials don't create happiness, and I know this. You know, I come from a very, like, despite the fact of what my parents struggled to, but still we were very, very privileged. You know, I went to the best schools. We traveled all of Europe every summer. You know, I was like the little Paris Hilton of Lebanon with my little hoochie coochie. And now, oh, I was miserable. I tried to commit suicide how many times, you know? And then when now, if you look at it materially, I don't have an end of all of that. And I am, and you can tell, you know,
yeah,
just by
there's
looking at me.
aliveness and innocence, and
Yes, I,
that's
I am
the bottom.
happier than, and when I've guys, go walk in the park, go see a tree, you know, instead of going off to buy clothes and shoes and consume. Stop consuming things. Start, you know, consuming things that feed your soul, not just your body.
Yeah,
You know, we become
beautiful.
slaves. We've become slaves to our phones, to our
Yeah.
tablets, to our.
And I really, really want to here, take this opportunity to highlight that the matrix is so-called matrix is not outside. It is the person that I have become that
Yes,
I am enslaved to. This is
yes,
so key because
yes.
the majority of people have this predisposition that actually the world is outside. No, I
No,
am in my own way, and so I think
yes,
this may be a wonderful place for us to bring our conversation
yes.
to close, which I've really, really enjoyed and got
Same here,
a
Basta.
lot out of it, Hanan, because I think your story um, is very important because it is a story of construction. It's a story of how the personality comes about, is brought about by the various layers of conditioning and the consequence of that. And it is an important one because again, I know for myself, it's not possible to live authentically out of that which I am believing about life. I have to, if I'm going to believe something, I have to make sure that my beliefs are conducive to happiness. And on that note, is there anything that you want to share with our audience as a final way of anything positive, any
Yeah,
positive?
yeah. People often ask me, like, what is, like, if I had to say something, the most important thing, and I think that is at the core of who I am and at the core of my journey, and embracing it, because I always used to be judged for it. Is love.
Yeah.
Love is everything. Love yourself first. Love yourself. It starts there. If you can't love yourself, all your equipits, all your cellulite, all your things that society tells you, you whatever, everything you are, love yourself. Um, and then also love your planet, love your surroundings, be conscious of everything around you. And consciousness is love, because when you love, you are conscious. Not this romantic Valentine's thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about what compassion. That's the meaning of the true meaning of my name in Arabic. Hanan is compassion. We say Hanan al because that compassion, the love of a mother, it's unconditional. It doesn't know bounds. It doesn't know shapes. It's not, if you are like this, I will love you. You could give birth to anything and you will love it. And this world has birthed us. We are of this world. We are not separate from it. And it loves
Wonderful.
us. And
So,
we
and
are
we
love.
must
At
love
our
it back.
essence, we are love.
Yeah.
That's it for me. That's, nothing else.
Amazing. Hanan, thank you so much. We got
I it. You are
uh,
welcome. Thank you.
thank you for being my episode 1 guest. Let's hope
I'm so
this
honored. Thank
yeah.
you.
So thank you to everyone who is going to tune into this. If you're listening to this, you have got something out of this, you would like to reach out to Hanan in some way. Is there a way that they can reach you, Hanan? Is there?
At the moment, just probably my email, or
Okay. I
I,
will add the
you
email.
know,
I will add the email to this
yeah.
episode. And yes, I'm sure on behalf of Hanan, also wish you the best and look forward to yes, to another conversation.
Thank you,
Bye bye for
Bassam.
now. Thank you, Hanan. Take care. Bye bye for now.